My food truck, a beat-up hand-me-down I used to sell smoked brisket, lost its brakes and slammed into the back of a Rolls-Royce. I sighed and reached for the debit card in my pocket. I was just going to swipe and make the problem go away. Then the driver's door opened, and the woman who stepped out was the one who was almost my wife. The transformation on her face was dramatic and instant. Before I could even think to throw the truck in reverse and peel out, she was on me, slamming a foot into my gut with the force of a linebacker. Well, look what we have here, she snarled. 7 years ago, you ghosted me right before our wedding to chase your dreams. What happened? Did you dream your way into selling barbecue out of a rust bucket? That kick from Sophie White had some serious power behind it. I hit the pavement hard, my whole body rattling, sending the industrial-sized food warmer full of brisket rocking in the back of the truck. I groaned, clutching my stomach, not even daring to get up or look at her. A cold sweat broke out all over my body. Sophie stood over me, arms crossed, the sharp click of her heels on the asphalt announcing her arrival. Her fingers, cold as ice, hooked under my chin and wrenched my face toward hers. Leo Evans, you have got to be kidding me. Her voice was low and dangerous. 7 years, and you fall right back into my lap. So tell me, you just smashed into my car. How exactly are you planning to pay for it? She started patting my cheek with her soft palm, slow and deliberate. Each tap was a tiny explosion of humiliation. I sat there on the ground, staring up at her. Her hair fell over one shoulder as she looked down, her face framed against the gray Seattle sky. My nose started to burn the way it does right before you cry. She was still so beautiful. Thinner, though, I could tell she wasn't eating right. There was a slight rasp in her voice, and the rims of her eyes and the tip of her nose were pink. It was freezing out, and all she had on was a thin designer coat. She must have been cold. I just stared, completely lost in the moment, even as she kept up the condescending little pats. For a second, it felt unreal, like a dream. Another sharp smack to the back of my head snapped me out of it, my ears ringing. Stop looking at me with that pathetic, lovesick expression, she spat. You dumped me 7 years ago. Now you're some broke loser who just wrecked my car. You think you can play the sympathy card to get out of paying? My hand fumbled for the debit card in my pocket, my chest tightening with a sharp, familiar ache at the disgust in her voice. This was the same woman who used to have a meltdown if I got a paper cut. Now she was hitting me herself, and she wasn't holding back. But then I remembered why. 7 years ago, 3 days before our wedding, I had to vanish without a word. My DEA unit's captain was captured during a deep cover operation, and I was the only one who could get him out. Strict operational security meant I couldn't tell anyone, not even her. The rescue went sideways. A bomb took out half the building. I didn't wake up until 3 months later. Just when I was planning how to explain everything, how to beg my way back in her life, I was handed a piece of paper that blew up my world all over again. A terminal cancer diagnosis. So I made a choice. It was better to let her go, to let her be free, than to chain her to a man with no future. I never thought that after all this time, when all I wanted was to live out my last days fulfilling a lifelong dream of being a chef, I'd run into her like this. 1,000 emotions crashed over me. I fought back the tears burning my eyes and tried to pull out the card. It's not like that, I stammered, desperate for her to understand. I'm not that guy. I can't. The word pay never made it out. It was like she knew what I was going to do. She leaned back, a triumphant smirk on her face, and with a dramatic flick of her long hair, she pulled a folded document out of her designer handbag. She'd had this ready for a long time. Sign it, she said, ignoring my stunned, deer-in-the-headlights expression. She crouched down, grabbed my hand, and bit down hard. Blood welled up instantly. Before I could react, she pressed my bleeding thumb onto the contract, a document I hadn't even read. I knew you couldn't afford it, she declared, her voice ringing with victory. So, you just signed this personal servitude agreement. From now on, I get to exercise all the rights of an owner over you. I yelled in pain, scrambling to my feet and shaking my bloody hand. What the hell, Sophie? Are you crazy? She slapped me again. Shut up. Look at you, a pathetic mess. Don't play the big shot when you're flat broke. She waved the blood-stamped contract in my face. It's signed. You can't pay for the car, so you have two choices. Go to jail or let me make your life a living hell as punishment. She poked me hard in the chest. Leo Evans, I'm going to make you realize that leaving me was the biggest mistake of your life. I must have been blind to ever think about marrying a scrub like you. From this moment on, I'm going to make you regret the day you were born. She was so fierce, so alive in her anger. And as she stood there jabbing a finger into my chest, the hand in my pocket tightly gripping that debit card suddenly felt like it was encased in lead. I couldn't bring myself to pull it out. What did it matter? I had cancer. A month left, maybe. If I could just selfishly stay by her side a little longer, just to see her even like this. That wasn't too much to ask, was it? Sophie turned and walked away without a backward glance, calling over her shoulder, "Get over here now. I won't go back for my food truck." That smoked brisket had taken me 2 days to prepare. The warmer lid was still on, but if you opened it, the gorgeous color, the crispy bark, the tender, juicy meat, the smell alone was enough to make you weep. But another icy glare from her cut threw me. "Are you deaf? Move it." So, with one last longing look at my little business, I jogged to catch up. She took me to her place, a sprawling mansion in Medina. She showed me to my room, a 10 by 10 storage closet. She really did hate me. Her 5,000 square foot house had a full-time cleaning service, but she made me get on my hands and knees and polish the marble floors with a single cloth until they gleamed, criticizing every smudge. She had a garage full of luxury cars. But when she wanted to inspect one of her downtown retail stores 5 miles away, she made me pedal her there on a $138 zero-in-home exercise bike that she'd had modified for the road, huffing and puffing like a dog. It was like she genuinely wanted me dead. I crouched in a corner, miserable, looking at my hands, now covered in new cuts and calluses from all the manual labor. The ache in my heart was too deep for words. "Leo, the boss wants you to go to that new cafe, the 118 blocks away, and get her a single-origin Ethiopian pour-over brewed to exactly 115 degrees, a maid relayed. And she said, if it's 1 degree hotter or colder, she's going to tan your hide." A new order. I signed a pathetic okay and dragged my exhausted body out the door like a zombie. I almost ran right into Sophie in the hallway. Her body, soft and fragrant, stumbled into my chest. She felt warm, and my heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would break free. Terrified she'd be disgusted by the contact, my first instinct was to push her away to keep my distance like a good servant. I held my breath, but I couldn't stop myself from taking a small, secret inhale, trying to memorize the scent of her hair. "Sophia," I began, already trying to politely move her away. But then she turned, her small fist pressing against my chest as she looked up at me, her eyes wide and glistening. "Leo," her voice was a whisper, completely stripped of the anger and contempt of the past few weeks. It was the voice from our past, from when we were crazy in love, and my nose instantly started to burn again. My eyes welled up as I looked down at her, my own voice coming out soft. "What's wrong?" Sophie tilted her head slightly, her cheeks flushed. She didn't say anything. Then her hands started to move. Boldly, she began unbuttoning my shirt, her cool, smooth palms sliding against my skin, exploring my chest. She rested her head against me, completely trusting. I was about to spontaneously combust. Something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to push her away. Then I heard her mumble, her words slurring together. "You jerk, making me miss you. If I keep you here with me, will you see how good I am again? Will you regret leaving me?" Her voice trailed off, and her body went limp, slumping against me. Her words were like a knife to the gut. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood, forcing back the tears. I touched her forehead. It was burning up. The idiot had a fever. She was delirious. That was the only reason she'd let her guard down, let the truth spill out like that. Without a second thought, I scooped her into my arms and ran faster than I've ever run in my life, sprinting back to her bedroom. I called her doctor, got Force set up, laid out her medicine, and tucked her into bed, wiping the sweat from her brow. Then I sat by her side, not moving an inch. I watched over her for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, exhausted and weak, I closed my eyes for just a moment. A faint cough startled me awake. Sophie was stirring, trying to sit up, reaching for the glass of water on her nightstand. "I'll get it. I'll get it," I said, my heart clenching with concern as I reached to help. I didn't notice the way she was staring at me. When I turned back, I met her gaze. Her eyes were full of hope and a deep, hidden affection. "Were you worried about me?" she asked, her voice soft. "Did you stay here this whole time taking care of me?" She didn't even realize. She was nervously picking at her fingernails, her lower lip caught between her teeth as she waited for my answer. In that instant, a voice inside me screamed the truth. "Yes, I was terrified for you. I never want to leave your side." But her delirious confession echoed in my mind, followed by the crushing reality of my diagnosis. I couldn't give her that hope, not when I was going to die. I forced a twisted, ugly smile onto my face, trying to sound breezy and uncaring. "Worried about you? Please. If I was worried, I wouldn't have left you 7 years ago. I'm just making sure you don't die on me. Who else would I get my revenge on?" Huh? Ha! I made myself laugh loud and obnoxious. The light in Sophie's eyes flickered and died. She looked down, a flash of disappointment crossing her face before she hid it. She didn't say anything. I knew it wasn't enough. I had to crush any lingering hope. I took a deep breath and went for the kill. "Besides, do you want to know the real reason I left you 7 years ago? It's because..." I paused, then delivered the final devastating blow. I let the words hang in the air. Sophie's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. I felt sick to my stomach, my toes curling in my shoes, but I kept the pathetic smile plastered on my face. A silence so profound it felt like a physical weight settled over the room. Smack! The slap was so hard my head whipped to the side, my ears ringing. Her strength was terrifying. Tears streamed down her face, but her eyes were cold with disgust. She threw a credit card onto the bed and pointed a trembling finger at the door, refusing to even look at me. "Get out." My jaw tightened. I lowered my head, my fist clenched at my sides. This damn cancer, I thought. This is its fault. Our story. It really was over. I turned and walked away, my own sense of loss a hollow ache in my chest. I drifted aimlessly. The pain was so sharp, the only thing that dulled it was throwing myself into my work. I parked the food truck on a street corner and just sold brisket day after day. One afternoon, while I was sitting on the curb, lost in thoughts of Sophie, I ran into an old buddy from my DEA unit, Mark Anderson. He spotted me from a block away, and the second he caught the scent of my 10-hour smoked brisket, his eyes lit up, the same old hungry glint I remembered. Seeing him, I felt a spark of my old self and immediately offered him a slice. But this time, he didn't dig in right away. He just stared at the brisket in his hand, his expression filled with guilt. After a long, awkward silence, he finally looked at me, unable to meet my eyes. "Leo, there's something I have to tell you." I looked at him confused. "What's up?" "It's about that cancer diagnosis you got. We just found out at the hospital. They made a mistake. A huge one." He took a deep breath. "The diagnosis wasn't for you. It was a copy of a report for some old guy who died 13 years ago. He had the same name. The doctor who handled your file was a mess. He input the wrong date and mixed up the paperwork." I tried to process his words, but they felt like a foreign language. A tidal wave was building inside me. Afraid it was some kind of sick joke, I stared at him and asked again, "What did you just say?" Mark put a hand on my shoulder, trying to be comforting. "It's okay, man. They fired the doctor. He'd screwed up a bunch of other cases, too. He's facing lawsuits. Fines." I stopped hearing him. One thought drowned out everything else. I'm not going to die. I'm not dying in a month. I can have a future with Sophie. A long one. A surge of pure, world-conquering courage shot through me. I took off, sprinting through the crowded streets, weaving through people like a blur. I had to get to her. I had to tell her everything. I had to tell her how much I loved her. How I'd never stopped. We could finally be together for real, forever. I reached her front gate, skidding to a halt, my heart about to explode out of my chest. I took a shaky breath, trying to smooth down my clothes. I knocked on the door. "Sophie, it's me." The door swung open. Sophie stood there, her face a blank mask. In her hand, with a large spray bottle for her orchids. She lifted it and sprayed me directly in the face. I squeezed my eyes shut against the mist. When I opened them, I saw him. A handsome, well-built guy was lounging on Sophie's bed. The bed she never let anyone touch, kicking back with his legs crossed. He was casually eating an apple that Sophie had clearly peeled for him. Sophie was on the phone, her eyes dark with exhaustion, fixed on me with utter disdain. She made no effort to lower her voice. Yeah, a guy like Leo Evans. As if. I'd rather die alone than look at that train wreck again. What? Julian's back in town, and he wants to ask me out. Tell him to get in line. I've got 13 other tech prodigies and political heirs waiting to take me on a date. Got to go. My handsome darling Ryan is waiting for me. We need to plan our wedding. It's in 2 weeks. She hung up and shot me one last look as if I were something she'd scraped off her shoe. The door slammed in my face. The sheer volume of new information felt like a physical blow. My head was spinning. So the guy on her bed, that was her handsome darling Ryan. She really didn't love me anymore. She was already planning a wedding in 2 weeks. A crushing weight settled on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. I stumbled away from her house and pulled out my phone, dialing a number I hadn't used in years. Hey, Dr. Peterson, it's Leo. I know I haven't seen you in forever, but I need a favor. Can you use your medical genius to tell me if I'm actually dying of cancer? Mark said it was a mistake, but if I'm not dying, why do I feel like I am? Dr. Peterson was an old family friend, a doctor my dad had once saved. He loved to talk, and I usually avoided him, but I was desperate. I begged him to give me a full physical. When he held the stack of test results, peering at them over his glasses with a serious frown, I knew it. Bad news. Just tell me straight, Doc, I said, staring at the blinding fluorescent lights above, my hand over my twitching heart. How long do I have? Dr. Peterson made a tisk-tisk sound and then smacked me on the back of the head. Why the melodrama, kid? There's nothing seriously wrong with you. A few minor things a good diet will fix. I sat up, fighting the urge to cry with relief. Really? But why do I feel so awful? I can't eat. I can't sleep. I pass out around 3 o'clock, and I'm wide awake by 5. All I see are memories of her playing on a loop. I remember what she was wearing every day, the look on her face, every word she said. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you're about to die. What else could this be? It's been going on for 7 years, right around the time I got the diagnosis. I was convinced he was just telling me a kind lie. He shoved the papers into my hand, looking at me like I was an idiot. You think I'd fake these? You're a smart kid, Leo, but you can be so dense. What you're describing, that's lovesickness. It's love. You're just so in love with this girl that you can't eat or sleep. You're wasting away from a broken heart. He sighed, stroking his white beard wistfully. Ought to be young. I had a love like that once. You know what they say? Love is the courage to step out of the darkness. I wasn't brave enough. I let her go. I tuned him out. All that mattered was that I was okay. I wasn't dying of cancer. And I was hopelessly, deeply in love with Sophie. Dr. Peterson could diagnose my lovesickness, but he couldn't cure it. I walked out onto the street, my mind racing. I thought about everything and finally came to a decision. If I couldn't be the one to make her happy, then I would personally find a man who could. With grim determination, I called a private investigator and gave him the name Sophie had mentioned on the phone. After all, a solid financial foundation is key to a stable life. The mention of a $40 million trust one was willing to put up for the information made me feel terrified. I held the thick dossier in my hands, reading through it again and again, my heart sinking lower with each page. Damn it all. Of all the guys on the list, the one with the best character, best personality, good looks, solid genetics, and the wealthiest family. Number 1 was that guy, Ryan Shaw. Cursing my luck, I snuck back over to Sophie's house. I slipped the folder, complete with my own color-coded notes and rankings, through her mail slot. Hey there, the Secret Helper Society. We've taken the liberty of vetting your potential partners for you. Please feel free to choose based on the provided rankings. You're welcome, I whispered to the door before bolting. I thought I'd been so clever. The next night, at 2:42 a.m., a message popped up on my phone from Sophie. It just said question mark. I was so startled I dropped my phone on my foot. After an hour, 3 minutes, and 28 seconds of careful deliberation, I decided to reply with a simple haha. The moment I sent it, she replied instantly, "Psycho, get lost." Then she blocked me. The sorrow and despair I felt were vast enough to swallow the universe. With no way to contact her, all I could do was sell my brisket and tick off the days until her supposed wedding. My brisket was a hit. I sold it for $180 a pound, thinking that would keep the crowds manageable. I was wrong. The truck went viral. I used only the best ingredients: prime-grade beef, spring water from the mountains, Pappy Van Winkle for the marinade. The sauce was a secret family recipe, so good you could pour it on a shoe and it would taste divine. The second I lifted the lid of the warmer, the rich, smoky aroma would hit you like a religious experience. The lines were insane. People's noses would twitch, their stomachs would rumble. It was like they were discovering the true meaning of food for the first time. Every day, even with my strict limits, I sold out completely. It kept my body busy, but my mind and my heart were still with Sophie. 3 days left. In 3 days, she would marry that Ryan guy. I drove my truck as far out of the city as I could to a remote, quiet spot by the coast. I couldn't bear it. Soon, giant screens downtown would be plastered with pictures of her and the heir to some tech fortune. The perfect happy couple. They'd be trying on tuxes and wedding dresses, cruising around in fancy cars, shopping, having romantic dinners, going to the movies. Maybe they'd even take a trip on a yacht and give interviews to the press. I couldn't stand the thought of seeing any of it. I had to get away. I sat alone on a rock, the sound of the waves doing nothing to quiet the images of her in my head. I cracked the lid of the warmer, hoping some lucky soul would wander by so I could give them a free sample. Suddenly, a pair of expensive leather shoes stopped in front of my truck. I heard a distinct, loud gulp. I looked up and my jaw dropped. Who was this? It couldn't be the disheveled but still impossibly handsome and aristocratic face. A man only slightly less good-looking than me. Hell, I recognized him instantly. It was the jerk I'd seen on Sophie's bed, her handsome darling, Ryan Shaw, the man she was going to marry. But if he was getting married in 3 days, shouldn't he be with Sophie? What was he doing all the way out here? I eyed him with a mix of suspicion and envy. He, however, only had eyes for my brisket. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated longing. "How much?" he mumbled, his voice filled with desire. "Dude, how much for this? It looks incredible. Can I just buy all of it?" He was practically drooling. I slammed the warmer lid shut. The sound snapped him out of his trance, and he looked up at me sheepishly. For a second, I thought he was going to beg. Then his expression shifted, recognition, then surprise, then a deep, burning hatred. Before I could even process the change, he channeled his inner Sophie and swung at me. A solid punch landed right on my cheek. You bastard," he yelled. "I ought to kill you. It's your fault. My aunt wasted the best years of her life." It was a hell of a punch. I could feel my face swelling instantly. But what stunned me wasn't the searing pain. It was his words. "What do you mean your aunt? You mean Sophie's just your aunt?" Ryan looked at me like I was the dumbest person on the planet, like we weren't even the same species. My instincts kicked in. I saw his eyes flicker back toward the food warmer. I quickly lifted the lid, letting the fragrant steam waft out, and dangled a perfect, juicy slice of brisket in front of him. "Want some once-in-a-lifetime experience? You want it? Trade you for some information." Ryan's face was a stone mask. He was trying so hard to hold his ground, to stay angry at me. He forced himself to look away, but his nose and mouth had other ideas, twitching and practically leaning toward the meat on their own. "I would never talk to a lowlife like you who hurt my aunt so much." I just stared at him. "You might want to coordinate your words and your actions, buddy." He looked down at the brisket he had somehow already shoved into his mouth, so good it was bringing tears to his eyes. His face turned beet red. After a moment of flustered coughing, he gave up all pretense. He shamelessly asked for another piece and finally agreed to talk. We sat side by side on the rock, legs crossed, looking out at the ocean as he devoured the brisket. Ryan, looking surprisingly thoughtful, started to talk. "Back then, my aunt fought with our whole family for you. She went on a hunger strike for a week just to get them to agree to let her marry some broke guy nobody knew. I looked down my throat tight. I remembered. She told me that just 4 days before the wedding, the day before I got the call that sent me away. I had wanted to tell her then that I wasn't broke, that with my skills and the inheritance my father left me, I could have given her anything she wanted for the rest of her life. She never had to suffer for me, but I never got the chance. Ryan continued. She said the excuse you gave for ditching her was so lame, so unbelievable, and then you just disappeared. She spent the next 3 years torturing herself, trying to figure out what was so wrong with her that you would just throw her away. My own tears started to fall again. I dug my nails into my palms. I was such an idiot. Before I left on that mission, I prepared for the worst, lying there pinned under rubble, bleeding out. My biggest fear was dying without her knowing the truth. With my last bit of strength, I managed to call her. Hearing her voice was like a miracle. I could tell she was just as shocked and nervous to hear from me. But I said the cruelest thing I could think of. I asked her, Sophie, what's 1 + 1? Confused, she'd answered 2. Even then, with shrapnel on my back, I managed a weak laugh. Correct. You're too smart. I just realized I prefer my women a little dumber. We're not a good fit. We're done. Then I passed out. I woke up to a cancer diagnosis and stumbled through life in a fog, never contacting her again. Ryan was still eating, his tone still mournful. She spent years thinking about it, looking for you everywhere like a mad woman. She rehearsed what she'd say if she ever saw you again 1,000,000 times. I nodded numbly. That explained the instant contact. The family tried to set her up and arrange marriages, but she refused. She kept telling everyone she was waiting for you, so she could get revenge. His voice softened, but I grew up with her. I knew it wasn't about revenge. She was just holding on to the hope that she could find you, get a real answer, and maybe still be with you. My tears were flowing freely now, memories flooding back. I let her down, I whispered. But that wedding you two were planning. Ryan finished the last of his brisket and jumped to his feet, kicking me in the butt. That's your fault, too. When she found out you were gay, she was completely devastated. She'd refused to help me plan my other aunt's wedding. But after that, she threw herself into it just to keep busy. He paused, and his voice dropped. And then what? I asked, seeing the miserable look on his face. I knew it was bad. The joy from the delicious brisket had vanished, replaced by a deep gloom. And then, a few weeks ago, the White family business collapsed. My family, the Shaws, were major stockholders. We all took a massive hit. My other aunt's fiancé called off the wedding, and the Vance family saw an opportunity. They're forcing Sophie to marry their son, Julian Vance, in exchange for bailing out the company. Her parents are so materialistic, they got on their knees and begged her to save the family's legacy. So now she's probably waiting to be married off to that psycho. The name hit me like a ton of bricks, Julian Vance. I remembered him from a PI report. He was the worst of the bunch, a notorious playboy with a violent temper and a history of assault. Sophie could be with anyone, but not him. A fierce protective urge surged through me. I had to get her out of there. I jumped to my feet, hopped in my truck, and started speeding back toward the city. Just then, my phone rang. It was my old captain. Leo, I know you've been retired for years, but we've got a situation, a Class A target, and frankly, we could use your help. Clenching the steering wheel, I floored it. Tell me, we've been tracking a major money laundering operation. All signs point to Vance Capital. They're financing all sorts of nasty business, drugs, trafficking, you name it. Their primary angel investor, a shell corporation called Monarch, is tied in too. Our intel says Julian Vance is getting married in 5 days, and every major player is going to be there. He paused. We need someone on the inside, someone who could blend in. Say, as a chef, we need you to help us take them all down in one fell swoop. Rage, hot and pure, burned through me. You're damn right I can. We worked out a detailed plan with the DEA. With my world-class culinary skills, I easily got myself hired as the head chef for the wedding banquet. Every dish for Sophie and Julian's wedding had to go through me. I used every trick I knew. I made the food look like art, smell intoxicatingly delicious, and taste so horrifyingly bad that one bite would make you want to turn your stomach inside out. I also added a generous, non-lethal dose of a powerful sedative to every dish. With the confidence of a five-star chef, I commanded the catering staff to serve a meal. It didn't matter how disgusting it was. As long as they took one bite, I knew that when my DEA brothers arrived, not a single one of these criminals would be able to run. My heart pounded as I waited, counting the seconds. I frantically scanned the venue for Sophie. I looked everywhere, but couldn't find her. Then I overheard two servers talking. Yeah, I don't think Miss White wants to marry Mr. Vance at all. I heard she hasn't eaten in 3 days. Think she'll pass out during the ceremony? Who cares? It's not our problem. Mr. Vance has her locked in that little room in the basement. Anyway, she can't escape. She's just some gold digger trying to marry up. Hey, these king crab legs smell amazing. Let's sneak a bite. I was about to bolt and find Sophie, but I paused. I turned back, grabbed the tray of king crab legs, and doused them with a dose of laxative 20 times the normal amount. Only after I saw the two gossiping servers take a big bite did I sprint off to find her. On the way, I made a quick stop in the kitchen for a container of mac and cheese, which I kept warm inside my jacket. I found her just as they'd said. She was huddled in a corner of a dark basement room, still in her heavy white wedding dress. She was curled into a tiny ball, her head buried in her arms, looking fragile enough to shatter. My heart broke into a million pieces. No one was around. I crouched down and slid the container of still steaming mac and cheese toward her. Sophie didn't look up, but she sensed me and flinched away, but the familiar, comforting smell was too much for her to ignore. She took a tentative sniff. Her head shot up. I could see clearly that her eyes, usually so bright, were red and swollen. She'd been crying for a long time. Her makeup was ruined, and fresh tears were still streaming down her face. She stared at me as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She didn't speak, just tilted her head and watched me. It hurt to see her like this. I heard her stomach growl. I pushed the container closer. Eat. Sophie sniffed again, and the tears started flowing even faster. She started babbling, her words slurring together. I must be starving to death. Why else would I be seeing Leo Evans in a place like this? I hope in my next life, I don't have this stupid romantic brain. I hope I never meet Leo Evans again. Mac and cheese. It smells so good. Is this a hallucination? Do dying people get to eat their favorite comfort food one last time? As she mumbled, she picked up the container and started shoveling the food into her mouth like a starved animal. But she seemed afraid that the hallucination of me would disappear. So, she kept eating, crying, and staring at me all at the same time. It was a heartbreakingly absurd sight. I wanted to laugh and slap myself at the same time. I couldn't stop myself from gently placing a hand on her head. I just patted it softly. Sophie froze. Her eyes grew wide. She stared at me, her voice trembling. You're real. The knot of emotion in my throat was too tight for words. I wanted to cry, to laugh, to scream. Instead, I managed a stiff nod. I'm real, I said, my voice thick. I'm here to get you out. I'm not going to let you marry Julian Vance. Sophie just stared. Her lips parted in a stunned, oh. She seemed to be trying to force herself back to reality. She slapped her own cheeks hard. Get a grip, Sophie. You're losing it, she muttered to herself. Leo's gay. He would never do this for you. This isn't real. He'd drop you in a second if things got tough. You're the first thing he'd abandon. Stop imagining things. She was so cruel to herself. I couldn't take it anymore. Tears streamed down my face. I grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her into a tight embrace. Sophie, it's real. I'm real. I whispered into her hair. The Leo standing here right now is real. He's not gay. He loves you. That's real. He's here to crash this wedding and take you away. That's real too. Sophie, I want you by my side. I want you to be with me forever. All of it is real. Do you understand? She looked up at me, silent for a long moment. Then, as if making a final decision, she threw her arms around me and held on for dear life, her fingers digging into my back like she was trying to merge our bodies into one. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, followed by shouting. The raid was starting. Sophie didn't know what was happening and jumped back, startled. See, I knew I was going crazy. What is all that? I glanced over my shoulder and saw some of Vance's thugs heading our way, clearly sent to grab Sophie in the chaos. Without another word, I scooped her up into my arms, barefoot, her dress now filthy from the dusty floor, and took off running, weaving through the pandemonium upstairs. Freeze! Officer, I'm one of the good guys. Vance, drop the champagne bottle. Where's she? Where the hell did you take Sophie? I was as close to getting her. That $21 million really wasn't me. The ballroom was a chaotic mess of cops, drugged-up criminals, and panicking guests. Sophie clung to my neck, her eyes fixed only on me. The world swirled around us, a blur of motion and noise. But in the midst of it all, it felt like it was just the two of us crossing an impossible distance, seeing nothing and no one but each other. The rain started then, hard and sudden, drenching us both in seconds. It was just like the day we first met. It had been raining then, too. She'd slipped on some stairs and sprained her ankle. I had recklessly picked her up and sprinted to the campus clinic. The rain had soaked us both to the bone that day, too. I don't know how long I ran. I finally reached my truck and gently placed Sophie in the passenger seat. I started to get out to find a blanket for her. She grabbed my arm, stopping me. She seemed to have processed everything. "Do you know how much I hate the rain?" she asked, her voice quiet. "It's always so gray and depressing. I hate feeling that way." I looked at her, my heart twisting with a sudden, inexplicable fear. But in the next second, she gently cupped my face with her hands and gave me a light, fleeting kiss. "But I like the rain now," she said, her eyes shining. "Because rainy days are the days I find you. They're the days you come looking for me, and that makes me happy." I reached up and gently touched her cheek. She was about to sneeze, and I finally snapped out of my daze and grabbed a thick jacket from the back. As I wrapped it around her, she asked another question. "So you just kidnapped me from my own wedding. You're still a broke barbecue vendor. How exactly are you going to support a family?" Without a word, I reached into my pocket, pulled out a thick stack of credit and debit cards, and dropped them in her lap. "This should cover us for a few lifetimes." Sophie smiled, a real brilliant smile. "About time you told me." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Anything else?" "Now seems like a good time to clear the air." I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close and stroking her hair. Yeah, there was a lot to say. I had to explain all the misunderstandings of the past and start planning a future that was filled with her. I was going to spend the rest of my life writing the next chapter with her. "Indy,